Okay, so we have this polynomial. How many terms do you see? 3. So this time it's 3. In the previous set, we saw how many terms? 4. So we did grouping in that case. All right, now here, if you remember, the coefficient of x squared is what? 1. Coefficient of x squared is 1. Whenever the coefficient of the leading term, remember the x squared is called the leading term, whenever the coefficient of 1 is 1, that's the easy kind. And the way we did it, the easy kind, when the coefficient of x squared is 1, the way we did it was this way. First of all, what's the GCF? 1. We're going to do a couple where the GCF is not 1. In this case, it is 1. So then we go directly to the two binomials. Remember the two binomials. That's where we went into now. And then think FOIL. FOIL method. First times first has to be this leading term. So what's going to go inside these parentheses? X times x. So x and x. All right. Now, remember we wrote out x squared plus bx plus c last time. And we said that whenever the coefficient of x squared is 1, then the way we're going to approach this, the way we did it, was we said, well, I want to find two numbers. See these in here, right? I want to find two numbers. And remember, when these are your last. So last times last gives you a negative 12, right? So I want to find two numbers whose product is c, your constant. What's my constant here?
12.
Not 12. Negative 12. And I want the sum, because remember, that's the outer and the inner. The outer and the inner, that sum has to be the middle term. What's the coefficient of the middle term? Negative 1. So I want to find two numbers whose product is negative 12 and whose sum is negative 1. You come up with two pairs of numbers that you think may work. 4 and 3? All right, let's try 4 and 3. So someone said 4 and 3. All right, let's do this. 4 times 3 is what? 12. Right away, that's not correct.
Oh, it's negative.
Because I want negative 12. So if the product is negative, you got to think, if the product is negative, then the two numbers, one has to be positive, the other one has to be negative.
Negative 4 and 3.
Negative 4 and 3. Let's try negative 4 and 3. So that didn't work. All right. Negative 4 times a positive 3 is a what? Negative 12. Now let's look at the sum. When I add them up, what do I get?
Negative 1.
Negative 1, which is what you wanted. So that's correct. So those are the numbers that goes inside the parentheses. So I'm going to say, and the order which you put them does not matter. And the reason it does not matter is because the first terms are identical. They're both x's. So I could say x minus 4 times x. Now minus 3, that's not a negative, plus 3. All right, so x minus 4 times x plus 3. And again, always check. Use FOIL. X times x, x squared. The last. A negative 4 times a positive 3, negative 12. And let's look at the outer. What's the outer? What's the outer?
3x.
3x. What's the inner?
X.
Negative 4x. When I add them up, do I get a negative x? Yes. So there's your answer. Number 2. So you factor this trinomial as the product of two binomials. So how many factors do you see all together? How many factors do you see all together in your answer? Okay, tell me what those 3 are. Oh, 4 now? Factors are separated by products. So tell me what those 4 factors are if you said 4. So how many factors are there? 2. Your factors are x minus 4, and what's the other factor? X plus 3. Those are your factors. We talked about that word many times. I even keep bringing up the number 8. And I said, we know that 8 is 4 times 2, right? So that means that 4 is a factor. Because 4 times what is 8? 2. 2 is a factor. Because 2 times what is 8? 4. x minus 4 is a factor because x minus 4 times this gives us this trinomial. This is a factor because this times this gives me that trinomial. So there are two factors. Number 2, 18 minus 9x plus x squared. All right, now what you're going to do there is, first of all, you can see one on my math lab and one on the worksheet that looks like that. Notice that all the problems we've done last week was that the leading term, x squared, was first. You don't see that here. The constant's first. So let's put the leading term, x squared, first. So let's put this in descending order. Descending order. So if I put this in descending order, how are you going to write this?
X squared negative 9x plus 18.
All right. Now, is this the easy kind to factor? Yes or no? Yes. Why is this the easy kind to factor? Why is this trinomial the easiest kind to factor? Because it has a leading coefficient of 1. Now, again, first of all, though, you got to look for GCF. What's the GCF? 1. So now we're going to go and do the same idea here. We're going to go to two binomials. First times first is x squared. What goes in there? X and x. And then now I've got to figure out what these numbers need to be. All I know is that their product has to be what? Positive 18. So I need to find two numbers whose product is 18 and whose sum is negative 9. Huh? All right, she's saying negative 6 and negative 3. Is that correct? Yeah. A negative times a negative is a positive, so negative 6 times a negative 3 is a positive 18. And when I look at the sum, a negative 6 and a negative 3 is a negative 9. So those are the ones you're going to use. Does it matter in the order which I put these in here? No, the reason is because those two terms right here are the same. They're identical. So it'll be x minus 6 times x minus 3. And again, before you go 1, always check. X times x is x squared. Let's do the last. I'm checking using FOIL, F-O-I-L. A negative 6 times a negative 3 is a positive 18. Now let's do the outer and the inner. What is the outer? Negative 3x. What is the inner? When I add them up, do I get a negative 9x? Yes, so there's your answer. X minus 6 times x minus 3. Again, someone else could have put the x minus 3 first. It doesn't matter. Multiplication is commutative. The order does not matter. So x minus 3 times x minus 6 could have been the other answer. All right, number 3. So number 3, suppose you had this. You had 3x squared plus 9x minus 30. 3x squared plus 9x minus 30. What's the first thing you're supposed to look for? GCF. Do I have a GCF other than 1 here? Yes. What is it? 3. So you're going to factor out the GCF. You don't throw it away. It's going to be part of your answer. It's a factor. It's one of the factors. So you're going to factor it out. So it'll be 3 times what? X squared. 3x minus 10. All right. Am I done? No. You want to see if that trinomial can be factored further. Just like in an earlier problem, when, let's see if I can find it. Let's see, in an earlier problem, we had, maybe I can't find it anymore, but remember when you factor out that 3? I can't find it. But it was one of the factors where there was a common factor of 3. All right. So the same idea there. So we're going to take x squared plus 3x minus 10. Is this the easy kind of factor? Yes. So x and x. All right, so I need two numbers whose product, I got to fill in these numbers here. So I need two numbers whose product is what? Huh? Negative 10. So product has to be negative 10. And I need the outer and the inner to have what coefficient for x? Positive 3. 5 and negative 2. All right, y'all agree? Yeah. 5 times the negative 2 is a negative 10. And when I add up those two numbers, I do get positive 3. So right here, you're going to say x, and it doesn't matter which one I put first. You're going to say x plus 5 times x minus 2. But that's not the answer. What's going to be the answer? 3 times x plus 5 times x minus 2. All right, number 4. You have x squared minus x plus 4. X squared minus x plus 4. All right. What's the GCF? How many terms do you see? 3. And notice that the leading term is square, right? X squared. So let's go directly to two binomials. Okay, what's going to go inside the first? X and x. All right, so far we were good. All right, now I need to fill in these terms here. So I need two numbers whose product is what? 4. So I need the product to be 4, and I need the sum to be what? Negative 1. Give me two numbers whose product is 4, two whole numbers whose product is 4, and whose sum is a negative 1. Huh? Right, there aren't any two whole numbers whose product is 4 and whose sum is negative 1. Very good. So at least one person remembered last class period that means that this cannot be factored. Right? It cannot be factored. But what did you write in the blank? Prime. So you'd say prime. Cannot be factored. All right, number 5. Number 5, suppose we had 3x squared minus 24x plus 45. 3x squared minus 24x plus 45. All right, what's the GCF? 3. So we get 3 times, what goes inside the parentheses? X squared minus 8x plus what? 15. All right, now remember though, you don't stop there. You got to look at that trinomial and see if you can do anything further with it. See if you can factor that into two binomials. What's going to go inside the parentheses? The first. X and x. All right, I need to complete these two parentheses right here. So I need two numbers whose product is 15 and whose sum is negative 8, right? So you said negative 5 and what?
Negative 3.
Yeah. So a negative times a negative is a positive. So I do get positive 15. And when I add them up, I do get this negative 8. So there's going to be x minus 5 times x minus 20. Again, it didn't matter if you put x minus 3 first. It does not matter. But what are you going to put as the answer? 3. Don't forget the GCF. You got to bring it down. It's got to be part of the answer. 3 times what? X minus 3. All right, so that's number 5. Okay. All right, number 6. All right, number 6. Suppose you had 6a squared plus 24a minus 192. 6a squared plus 24a minus 192. All right. What's the GCF?
6.
6? All right, so 6 times what? A squared plus 4a. And then use your calculator. What's going to be this?
32.
36?
32.
32? All right, so let's kind of figure out if I can factor this even further. A squared plus 4a minus 32. All right, remember using the letter A. Make sure you use the letter A, not X or some other letter. So I know I'm going to have an A and an A, right? Okay, so I got to fill in these terms now. So I need that product to be a negative 32. So I need two numbers whose product is a negative 32, and the sum is what? 4. Come up with something. Write something down and see if it works.
Positive 8, negative 4.
Positive 8, negative 4. Let's see. 8 times a negative 4 is a negative 32. And when I add them up, I do get what? I do get 4. So that's correct. So that means that this will be A plus 8 and then A minus 4. So that means that the answer, though, will be what? 6 times A plus 8 times A minus 4. All right, number 7. Okay, now what's going to happen, well, let's look at 7 first. You have A squared minus 9AB, that's 9AB, plus 14B squared. So now you have two letters, you see two letters, whereas in the previous 6 problems, the trinomial only had one letter. Now you have 2. But still, notice that the leading term, that first term, A squared, has what coefficient?
1.
1. So that's the easy kind still. We're going to do the same idea, knows the same idea, except we have to be aware that there are 2 variables. What's the GCF of those 3 terms?
1.
1. GCF is 1. So I'm going to go directly to the 2 binomials. The first one's easy. What times what is A squared?
A.
A times A. All right, now, just like before, I got to fill this part in right here, right? So I need two terms whose product is 14b squared. Let's just look at the 14 for right now. I need 2 numbers whose product is what? 14, and the sum is what? Negative 9. Okay. Negative 7, negative 2. Okay? Negative 7, negative 2. So that goes inside the parentheses. But be careful. I'm just going to write this for right now. So A minus 7, A minus 2. And that's what most of you are going to write. But you got to remember, though, that when I check using FOIL, what's a negative 7 times a negative 2? Positive 14, but that's not what I wanted. What did I want? 14b squared. So what is it I got to attach here? B's. So it'll be A minus 7b times A minus 2 what? B. And now, make sure you get that middle term. What's the outer? What's A times the negative 2b? Negative 2ab. What's the inner? Negative 7ab. When I add them up, do I get that negative 9ab? Yeah. So there's your answer. Okay. All right, number 8. Suppose I had m squared minus mn minus 30n squared. So m squared minus mn minus 30n squared. Okay, just you need to always ask yourself, what's the GCF first? What's the GCF? 1. Okay, since it's 1, I'm not going to do anything else with that GCF. What's the leading term? M squared. What's the coefficient of it? 1. So that's going to be the easy kind. So I'm going to go directly to the two binomials. What times what's m squared? M. Okay. Now I got to fill this part in. So I need two terms whose product is this last. But just look at the coefficient right now. So I need two numbers whose product is what?
30.
Not 30. Negative 30. Negative 30. So the product needs to be negative 30. And the sum needs to be what coefficient? Negative 1.
Positive 5, negative 6.
Hmm?
Positive 5, negative 6.
Positive 5, negative 6. Y'all agree?
Yes.
Yes. So the product is negative 30 and the sum is negative 1. All right, now remember though, you're going to say this. Some of you are going to say, well, that's going to be m plus 5 times m minus 6. But if you looked at it carefully, when you do the FOIL, when you check by FOIL, what's a positive 5 times a negative 6? Negative 30, but that's not what you wanted. You wanted a negative 30 n squared. So that needs to be m plus 5 n times m minus 6 n. Now again, let's check to make sure we get that middle term. What's the outer? What's m times a negative 6 n? Negative 6 m n. What's the inner? 5 m n. And what's 5 and a negative 6? Negative 1 m n, which is what you wanted. Okay, negative 1 m n. So there's your answer right here. Okay, all right, let's look at number 9. Okay, number 9, suppose we had this. We had x squared minus 6xy plus 9y squared. So x squared minus 6xy plus 9y squared. What's the leading term? X squared. What's the coefficient?
1.
1. What's the GCF? 1, right? So that's the easy kind. So I'm going to go directly to the two binomials. What's going to be the first, though? X and X. So I got to fill this out, though. I got to fill in these terms. So I need two terms whose product is 9y squared. But let's look for 9 for right now. I need a product of 9 and a sum of what? Negative 6. What do you think works?
Negative 3 and negative 3.
Negative 3 and negative 3. But remember, though, that's 9y squared, right? So let's go ahead and fill this in. So it'll be x minus what? 3y times x minus what? 3y. And you can always check the FOIL. What's x times x? X squared. Let's do the last. What's the negative 3y times the negative 3y? Positive 9y squared. And I just got to check the middle term. That's the outer and the inner. What's the outer? Negative 3xy. What's the inner? And when I add them up, do I get a negative 6xy? Yeah. So that's your answer. Now, I want you to notice, what do you notice about these two binomials? They're the same. So since they're the same, you can write it as a binomial squared. So if you want to, you can also write it as x minus 3y to what power? The second.
But we can leave it just like that as well, right? Or no, we have to.
No, you can leave it like this or like that. Okay? Number 10. Okay, in 10 you have 2x squared y. I'm sorry, x cubed, excuse me. 2x cubed y minus 2x squared y squared minus 12xy cubed. All right, so 2x cubed y minus 2x squared y squared minus 12xy cubed. All right, GCF,
2.
2xy. GCF is 2xy. There's an x in every term, there's a y in every term. And so notice that for the x, there are 3 factors of x here, 2 here, 1 there. I need to take 1 factored. For the y's, there's 1 here, 2 here, 3 here. I need 1. Remember the smallest exponent. So the GCF is 2xy. So you can say 2xy times what?
X squared.
You all agree it's x squared? Okay. Minus, what about this one?
XY.
xy, good. And then minus
6y.
6y squared, is that correct? Okay. Now take this part here, that trinomial, go off to the side, and see if you can factor it. Okay, so what's going to be the first of these binomials? X and x. All right, now I need to fill in these two terms. So I need this product to be the coefficient -6, and the sum to be what? -1. So -6 product, -1 is the sum.
-3y, +2y.
Okay, so let's just talk about in terms of -3 and 2 first. So y'all agree that that product is -6 and that sum is -1? All right. Now, so right here though, that's going to be x minus 3 what? Y, and then x what? Plus 2y. Again, check. A -3y times a +2y is what? -6y squared. What's the outer?
2xy.
2xy. What's the inner? -3xy. When I add them up, do I get a -1xy? Yes. So what's the answer? 2xy, the GCF. Always remember the GCF. 2xy times what?
X minus 3y.
Times
X plus 2y.
x plus 2y? All right, there's the answer. All right, now one more. So number 11, what on one of the worksheets, and I'll show you where it is on that worksheet in a little while, but it's going to look like this: -x squared minus 3x plus 18. Notice all the problems with the leading term. The leading term had a coefficient of 1, positive 1. Here, the leading term has what coefficient? -1. So the directions is going to tell you, the directions will say factor out a -1. All right, so the GCF will be a -1. So factor out the -1. So in a factor out -1, though, you got to say -1 times whatever trinomial goes in there. So -1 times what is -x squared? Huh? What goes right here, guys?
X squared.
X squared.
Plus 3x.
A -1 times what's a -3x?
Positive 3x.
Positive 3x. So a negative times a positive is a negative. A -1 times what's a positive 18? Okay. All right, now I take this trinomial and I factor it further into the two binomials. So x and x. All right, now I got to fill this part in. Two terms whose product is -18, and I want the sum to be what? 3. Can you come up with something? Product is -18. This sum has to be -18, and the sum has to be a positive 3. Positive 6 and what? -3. Y'all agree? Okay. So it'll be x plus 6 times x what? Minus 3? But what's the answer? -1 times x plus 6 times what? X minus 3. That's the answer. Don't forget the -1. That was your GCF that you took out, was the -1. Okay? All right. So let me kind of give you those worksheets that goes with that. So that